good morning and welcome to Stories for the Cooped Up and Captive. You know, when times are tough and uncertain, there's a couple of tools I find particularly valuable. One is compartmentalization. I allow myself to step off the merry-go-round every now and then. The other is resilience. And whatever measure of resilience we have as a part of our makeup, we have learned, nurtured, and built on from what our parents and mentors have shown us, and was born out of necessity. And yeah, just like any other skill, resilience can be learned and built and perfected. Just ask my friend Scott Cluess. Not only does he have a master's in positive psychology, but he is a self-made man. He has lived it. Take sports, for example. I've seen a quote that sports does not build character, it reveals character. I'm not in the least bit interested in that chicken versus the egg debate. What I know is when things get tough for me, I put my mind on a mountain just outside of Durango, Colorado. So here starts the story. I had been on call and dad duty for the better part of 5 years, while my wife played for every co-ed soccer team in the city of Madison, sometimes until 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, in order to placate my pleas for a break and to maybe reconnect, she booked us a backcountry biking trip to Colorado. I had a pretty good idea how this story was going to end, but I was a till death do us part cradle Catholic, and I feared for my kids. I was hoping for a miracle in the mountains. Well, those hopes were crushed. Day one. 40 minutes out of Denver International Airport, she took a detour. Red Rocks Amphitheater was the scene of U2's Unforgettable Fire concert, the Beatles, and Brandy Carlisle. But that morning, that Saturday morning, sitting in the last pew, there were just two. Staring at the stage, she said, "You know, when we get back from this trip, we are through." She spoke but a whisper, but the words felt like a splitting maul right between my eyes. We spent the week sleeping in separate tents. At which point I'd like to pause from the story. Now, sleeping in separate tents for a couple on the rocks seems like a death knell. But think about it, if you will. For 6 straight days, you're camping way back in the way back. For 8 to 10 hours a day, you spend in the saddle of a mountain bike riding through monsoons, rain, hail, and sleet. Your only source of heat is a campfire, and anything close to a shower is an alpine lake or a stream full of snowmelt. It is not exactly the romantic equivalent of satin sheets at the Motel 6. So, it wasn't her worst idea ever. Back to the story. Our group met on Sunday morning in Telluride. Our lead guide was a man named John Humphreys. John revered the mountains like a farmer, his back 40 and his herd of Holstein dairy cattle. And he treated me like a broken-hearted big brother. He always had a bottle of fine agave and a shoulder to cry on. We would sit, he would listen until the flames flickered to embers. Mornings would start before dawn, with John beating a soup pot with a wooden spoon, bellowing, "Coffee!" The black roast fog wafting through the walls of my tent would induce a peristalsis that would deliver me first to a device that we affectionately called the groover, and second, huddle around last night's embers, shoveling down 3,000 calories of roadkill omelets, steel-cut oats, and orange juice. Wednesday, we rode a trail called the Indian Ridge Trail. There were herds of elks creek crossing, handlebar high monument flowers. We ate lunch at the top of the world, looking down at the La Salles and the La Plata mountain ranges on both sides of us. Day's end was around a caveman TV. Every now and then, the flames would flicker a face. Conversation was measured, muted, and reflective. But if I sat at 3 o'clock on one side, she sat at 9 o'clock on the other. At 14 miles long and 13,000 feet of elevation, the Indian Ridge Trail was but half the distance between she and I. Critical Thursday found us camping at a site known to the guides as the Vortex. And Friday morning, John gave us one last, most critical speech. If in doubt, chicken out. 3.5 hours of climbing and one man overboard delivered us to the foot of a featured that the guides called the Beast, a 1,500 vertical foot obstacle course on wheels. Now, in mountain biking, to clean is to conquer. To clean the Beast was unthinkable. But in fewer than 24 hours, I was going to be wedged into the window seat of a 737 Milwaukee bound, elbow to elbow with the mother of my children, looking through Craigslist for a new place to live. I was holding nothing back. John went up first. He punched the sky, gave a yee-haw. I pressed my chest tight to my top bar, levered my back tire on the trail, and pedaled like a man possessed. Around the corners, rocks and roots and water bars. When the trail gave me 25 feet of scree at a 10% incline, I soft pedaled as slow as I could keep that bike upright just to recover my breath. I made the first 2-3 switchbacks before I started to fail. So I bargained with my body for 150, then 25 pedal strokes until I was begging the engine room for every turn of the crank. And that's when I heard John. Big man of the Dairyland, you will not quit. At which time I was honking like a goose. I'd lost my peripheral vision. My legs were on fire. I was fighting nausea. At one point in time, I remember relaxing my right eyebrow, searching for strength to turn the pedals one more time. Now, I have precious little memory of the last 250 meters of that trail, but I can tell you exactly one thing is a fact. My foot never touched that frickin' trail. The last thing I remember, I punched my front tire over the rim of that canyon, and there came John's hand on my headset and pulled me over the precipice. I didn't even unclip. I drifted to a stop and passed out. Now, back in Wisconsin, there were lawyers and counselors and a guardian ad litem I would still like to strangle. Nights, I drank myself to sleep, and mornings, there were mornings when it took all I had just to get out of bed. And on those days, I would put my mind back on that mountain. I would put my feet on the floor. I would get my feet to the breakfast table. From the breakfast table to the pickup truck, until eventually I had put together and conquered a day. Now, this used to be where this story ended. But about 10 years ago, my friends Ned and Sarah talked a red-headed farm girl into going swing dancing with me on a Saturday night. 2.5 years ago, standing on almost this spot, she agreed to be my wife. As a result, I am here to testify there is one source of strength even greater than arriving at certain failure and pushing past. That is to be loved unconditionally, respected, and accepted by your best friend in the whole wide world. Now, the story also has a postscript, and it's a particularly important postscript right about now. About 7 years after my initial conquest of the Beast, I was back in Colorado on another mountain biking trip, and John is very accustomed to me throwing my cell phone in the bottom of the bag. He points to a trail, I ride it. John had called a regroup, and he found me poring over the map. He walks up behind me, puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Hey, brother, I never seen you look at a map before. What's going on, man?" And I said, "John, you know that hill with 13 switchbacks and rocks and roots, the Beast?" He said, "Yeah, man, what about it?" I said, "That thing has got to be coming up soon." I could see his temples creak behind his glasses. He gave me a big old bro hug, and he said, "Son, that was 1.5 miles back." Oh yeah. If all else fails, keep something moving.